The wind howled across the frozen plains of Arden 9, carrying with it a biting chill that seemed to cut through even the thickest layers of clothing. Snow swirled in chaotic patterns, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Jonas Kane, a rugged explorer of the icy frontier, adjusted his scarf and peered through the storm. He had been patrolling the outskirts of the human settlement for hours, checking on supply caches and ensuring no one had gotten lost in the treacherous landscape. Life on Arden 9 was hard, even for those who had trained for it. The planet's extreme cold and violent weather left no room for mistakes. As he trudged forward, his boots crunching in the thick snow, Jonas heard a sound that made him pause. It was faint, almost drowned out by the wind, but unmistakably human. A voice calling desperately. "Please, let me in. I'm freezing." Jonas's instincts told him to be cautious. The frontier was full of dangers, and not everyone who called for help could be trusted. But there was something in the desperation of the voice that struck a chord deep inside him. Without thinking further, he began moving toward the sound, carefully scanning the swirling snow for any sign of life. After a few tense minutes, he spotted her. A woman wrapped in torn and frost-covered clothing stumbled toward him, her arms shaking as she tried to keep herself upright. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her lips were blue from the cold. Jonas reached her quickly, extending a gloved hand. "You're going to be all right," he said, pulling her close. He wrapped his own heavy coat around her, trying to shield her from the wind. Her name was Lyra, she told him, and she was a survivor from a distant research colony that had been thought lost months ago. Her voice trembled as she explained how she had been searching for something vital, only to be betrayed and left alone in the freezing wilderness. Jonas listened carefully, noting the strength and determination behind her words. She was scared, yes, but there was also a fierce intelligence shining through. He helped her to his outpost, a small but sturdy structure built from reinforced metal and insulated panels. Inside, a heater hummed softly, and the warmth was almost overwhelming after the harsh cold outside. Lyra sank to the floor, grateful for the reprieve, and Jonas quickly got her a blanket and a hot drink. As she warmed up, Lyra began to explain more about her mission. She was a scientist, part of a team sent to Arden 9 to study the planet's environment and develop technology that could help human colonies survive. Months ago, a rival faction had tried to seize the colony's research, hoping to use the terraforming technology for their own gain. In the chaos, Lyra had been separated from her team and left for dead in the icy mountains. Jonas felt a mix of concern and curiosity. The frontier was always dangerous, but Lyra's story hinted at something bigger, something that could affect every human settlement on the planet. "Why should I trust you?" he asked cautiously. Lyra looked at him with steady eyes, her breath still visible in the cold air of the outpost. "Because if we don't stop them, no one will survive this winter. They don't care who gets hurt. They just want control." Jonas nodded slowly. He could see the truth in her words. The rival faction was ruthless, and the stakes were high. Arden 9 was a planet that did not forgive weakness, and humans could not rely on luck alone. They would need courage, intelligence, and cooperation if they were to survive. Over the next few hours, Jonas and Lyra talked more, sharing their knowledge and experiences. Jonas explained the landscape, the hidden dangers, and the best routes through the mountains. Lyra shared what she knew about the terraforming device, and how it could change the climate of the planet if it fell into the wrong hands. Together, they began to piece together a plan. The storm outside showed no sign of letting up, and the temperature continued to drop. Jonas watched Lyra carefully, noting how she moved and how she handled herself despite the exhaustion. She was resourceful, quick-thinking, and unafraid to speak her mind. It was the kind of determination that had kept her alive in the wilderness, and it was exactly what he would need if they were to face the dangers ahead. As night fell, the outpost was filled with the quiet sounds of survival. The heater hummed. Snow pressed against the metal walls and the wind howled outside. Jonas could hear Lyra quietly checking the equipment she had managed to salvage, making sure it was still functional. Even in such desperate circumstances, she refused to give up. Jonas felt a sense of respect for her growing inside him. In the frontier, there were few who could endure the cold, the isolation and the constant threat of danger. Lyra was one of those rare people who not only survived, but also sought to protect others and complete her mission. Her courage reminded him why humans had managed to colonize such a harsh planet in the first place. The next morning, the storm had eased slightly, though the air was still bitterly cold. Jonas and Lyra prepared for their journey into the mountains, packing supplies, checking weapons, and reviewing maps. Every step would be dangerous, but they had no choice. The rival faction was moving quickly, and the terraforming device needed to be secured before it could be used for destruction. As they set out, Jonas could see the determination in Lyra's eyes. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a partner, a companion, and perhaps the key to stopping a disaster that could affect every human settlement on Arden 9. He felt a surge of confidence. Humans had always faced challenges, and time and again they had proven that ingenuity, courage, and compassion could overcome even the harshest conditions. The trek was difficult from the start. Snowdrifts blocked their path, and hidden crevices threatened to swallow the unwary. Jonas used his knowledge of the terrain to guide them safely, while Lyra used her scientific expertise to analyze the strange machinery and remnants they encountered along the way. They began to work as a team, each complementing the other's strengths. Despite the cold and fatigue, they shared moments of connection and conversation. They laughed quietly when a small animal scuttled across their path, and they shared stories of their lives before the colony, grounding themselves in the humanity that had carried them this far. It was these small moments that reminded them why they were fighting, not just for survival, but for the chance to protect and nurture life in a world that was often unforgiving. As they climbed higher into the mountains, Jonas felt a growing sense of urgency. The rival faction could strike at any moment, and the device they sought could alter the climate in ways that no human had yet predicted. Every decision mattered, every action carried weight, and failure was not an option. Lyra, despite her exhaustion, remained focused. She scanned the rocky cliffs and icy slopes with careful eyes, noting patterns and formations that might conceal the hidden device. Jonas marveled at her attention to detail. She was not just clever, she was relentless, and that relentless drive could make the difference between success and disaster. By the end of the first day of their journey, they found a sheltered spot to rest. The wind had picked up again, and the cold was becoming more severe. Jonas set up a small tent and a makeshift stove, while Lyra checked their equipment one last time before settling down to sleep. The night was long and harsh, but they took turns keeping watch, knowing that the dangers of Arden 9 were never far away. As Jonas stared out at the frozen horizon, he felt a mix of fear and hope. Fear for the challenges ahead, but hope in the strength of human determination. Lyra's survival, her courage, and her unwavering focus were proof that humans could endure anything, even the frozen, hostile landscapes of a distant planet. In that quiet, frozen night, Jonas realized that survival on Arden 9 was about more than just tools, technology, or physical strength. It was about trust, cooperation, and the courage to act when the world seemed impossible. He had brought Lyra inside out of compassion, but in doing so, he had also found a partner who could help humanity triumph in the face of adversity. As the wind rattled the tent and snowflakes danced in the light of their small fire, Jonas knew that their journey was only beginning. The mountains ahead were full of danger, but they were not alone. Together they would face the storms, the unknown machinery, and the rival faction, armed with nothing but human ingenuity, courage, and the determination to protect life on Arden 9. And with that thought, Jonas finally allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope, a hope that humans, even in the harshest of conditions, could rise above any challenge. This is around 1,300 words. Fully expand. The mountains of Arden 9 were even harsher than Jonas and Lyra had imagined. The snow was deep and the wind whipped through the jagged peaks like sharp knives. Every step forward required caution. One false move could send them sliding down a steep slope, lost forever in the frozen wilderness. Jonas led the way, breaking a path through the snow, while Lyra followed closely, scanning the landscape for signs of the hidden terraforming device. Despite the danger, Lyra never complained. Her determination was unshakable. She studied the alien markers carved into the icy cliffs, interpreting patterns and inscriptions that no one else could understand. Jonas marveled at her skill. She was not only intelligent but also fearless in the face of the unknown. That courage gave him strength, reminding him why humans had always been able to survive in even the most hostile environments. As they climbed higher, the air became thin and frigid, making it hard to breathe. Jonas kept a close eye on Lyra, making sure she did not overexert herself. "We need to take breaks," he reminded her gently, adjusting his scarf against the biting wind. "One step at a time or we won't get anywhere." Lyra nodded, appreciating his caution. She knew the dangers all too well, but she also knew that every minute wasted could give the rival faction the advantage. They had to move carefully, but they could not delay for too long. With determination, they pushed forward inch by inch, navigating icy ledges and treacherous slopes. As they progressed, they encountered strange remnants of an ancient civilization. Metal structures half buried in snow, machinery frozen in time, and glowing symbols that pulsed faintly in the cold light. Lyra studied each artifact, noting how the technology might connect to the terraforming device they were seeking. Jonas, though less knowledgeable about alien machinery, provided protection and practical solutions. He used his tools to clear obstacles and build temporary bridges over icy crevices, ensuring their path remained safe. The two of them were a team, each complementing the other's strengths. Lyra's knowledge and curiosity combined with Jonas's practical skills and survival experience made them formidable, even in the unforgiving environment. They communicated silently at times, understanding each other's movements and intentions without words. This silent coordination allowed them to navigate some of the most dangerous stretches of the mountains. After hours of climbing, they reached a plateau that gave them a clear view of the valley below. In the distance, they could see movement, figures trudging through the snow. Jonas squinted. "The rivals," he said quietly. "They're closer than I thought." Lyra's face hardened. "We need to be careful. They will try to reach the device before we do." They spent the next several hours planning their approach. Using snowdrifts and natural formations as cover, they moved slowly and deliberately toward the location Lyra had identified. Each step was measured, each decision weighed against the risk of discovery. The rivals were skilled, but Jonas and Lyra had the advantage of knowing the terrain and understanding the technology better than anyone else. Suddenly, a blinding snowstorm swept across the plateau, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Jonas and Lyra huddled together, using their clothing and gear to shield themselves from the wind. The storm was relentless, but it also provided them with an opportunity. While the rivals would have difficulty advancing in such conditions, Jonas and Lyra could use the storm as cover to get closer to their goal. When the storm finally eased, they were much closer to the device than they had anticipated. The alien structure was partially exposed, its metal surfaces glinting in the dim sunlight. Lyra's eyes widened in awe. "This is it," she whispered. "The terraforming device." But their moment of triumph was short-lived. From the shadows of a nearby ridge, the rival faction emerged, weapons drawn and faces set with determination. They had tracked Jonas and Lyra despite the storm, and now they were ready to take what they wanted by force. Jonas and Lyra exchanged a glance, silently agreeing on their plan. They could not fight the rivals head-on. They had to use their wits and the environment to their advantage. Jonas quickly assessed the terrain, spotting loose ice formations and narrow ledges that could be used strategically. Lyra prepared the device, figuring out how to activate it safely to protect the area rather than weaponize it. The confrontation began. The rivals advanced, underestimating Jonas and Lyra's resourcefulness. Jonas used the terrain expertly, causing small avalanches and dislodging ice to slow the enemy's advance. Lyra manipulated the device, creating a protective barrier of energy that pushed the rivals back without causing harm. Their combined ingenuity and courage gave them the upper hand despite being outnumbered. During the battle, Jonas noticed one of the rivals attempting to flank them from above. Thinking quickly, he used a combination of ice spikes and snowdrifts to block the path, forcing the rival to retreat. Lyra, meanwhile, used the device to stabilize the icy ground, preventing the enemy from gaining footing. Step by step, they turned the tide, demonstrating the effectiveness of human strategy and adaptability. Finally, the rivals realized they could not succeed. Their efforts to seize the device were thwarted at every turn, and the terrain itself seemed to resist them. Reluctantly, they retreated, disappearing into the snowy horizon. Jonas and Lyra watched them go, catching their breath and allowing the tension to ease slightly. With the immediate danger gone, they turned their attention to the device. Lyra carefully adjusted its settings, ensuring that it would stabilize the climate of the valley rather than alter it unpredictably. Slowly, the harsh winds began to subside, and the snowpack showed signs of gradual melting in controlled areas. The human settlements below would now have a safer environment, able to survive the harsh winter that had threatened them for so long. Jonas looked at Lyra with a mixture of admiration and relief. "We did it," he said simply. "We stopped them and protected the settlements." Lyra smiled, her breath visible in the cold air. "We did it together," she replied. "Humans have a way of rising to the challenge when it matters most." As they descended the mountain, the landscape looked different than it had before. The ice and snow still dominated, but there was a subtle promise of life beneath the frozen surface. Small plants and mosses peeked through, and distant streams began to flow again as the device stabilized the environment. It was a sign that human ingenuity and compassion could truly make a difference, even in the harshest conditions. The journey back to the settlement was slow but hopeful. Jonas and Lyra shared stories, laughed quietly at small mishaps along the way, and reflected on the lessons they had learned. They had faced danger, harsh weather, and ruthless rivals, yet they had prevailed without causing unnecessary harm. Their success was not just a victory over their enemies, but a triumph of human resilience, creativity, and morality. When they finally reached the settlement, the people greeted them with astonishment and gratitude. News of their courage and the stabilization of the valley spread quickly. Jonas and Lyra became symbols of human determination, showing that even in the coldest, most dangerous places, humans could survive and protect each other. That night, as Jonas and Lyra sat by a warm fire, watching the stars twinkle above the mountains, they reflected on everything that had happened. The journey had been difficult, the dangers real, but it had also been a testament to what humans could achieve. Trust, cooperation, and ingenuity had carried them through, and the settlements of Arden 9 would now benefit from their courage. Lyra looked at Jonas and said softly, "We've proven something important today, that even when the odds are against us, humans can rise to meet any challenge. That's what makes us strong." Jonas nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. "It's more than just strength," he replied. "It's compassion, determination, and the willingness to do what's right, even when it's hard." As they sat together, the wind outside calm and the stars shining brightly, they knew their work was far from over. Arden 9 would continue to test its inhabitants, but Jonas and Lyra had shown that humans, united and resourceful, could thrive anywhere. The cold, the mountains, and the challenges they had faced were only part of the journey, but they had overcome them with courage, intelligence, and heart. And so, in the frozen expanse of Arden 9, two humans stood as a reminder of what humanity could achieve. A future shaped not by fear or violence, but by determination, creativity, and the unwavering desire to protect life. Together they had turned a harsh, frozen world into a place of hope, showing that human resilience and morality could shine even in the darkest, coldest places.